What if tomorrow you get a news saying that the parliament has abolished elections and curtailed fundamental rights? Could parliament actually do such things? The answer is no. And the answers were answered in Keshavananda Bharati versus State of Kerala, where it was stated that the parliament could amend the constitution provided it could not affect the basic structure of the Indian constitution. On 24th April 1973, 13 judges of Supreme Court assembled in one courtroom. It was the largest bench in Indian history. They were not deciding a simple land dispute. They were deciding the future of Indian constitution. The question before them was explosive. Can Parliament change any part of the Constitution, or are there limited powers upon them? The case began as a challenge to land reform laws in Kerala. It involved property rights. Back then, the right to property was a fundamental right. But very quickly, it became something much bigger. It became a battle over who is supreme, Parliament or the Constitution itself. The judgment delivered that day did not just settle one dispute, it defined the very fabric of Indian democracy. It introduced a doctrine that continues to protect the Constitution even today. Yes, that doctrine is the basic structure doctrine. Now, let us move on to the facts. Keshavananda Bharati was the head of a religious institution in Kerala. The Mutt basically owned certain lands. Now, what did the government do? The Kerala government passed the Kerala Land Reforms Act of 1963, which was later amended in 1969. The law aimed to redistribute land, reduce large land holdings, promote social and economic justice. Under this law, some land which was owned by the Mutt was going to be taken over by the government. Now, what did Keshavanand Bharati do? On 25th, on 21st March 1970, he filed a petition before the Supreme Court under Article 32. Now, what did he argue? He argued that the law violated his fundamental rights, including Article 14, which spoke about right to equality, and Article 19, Clause 1, Subclause F, which spoke about right to acquire property, which was a fundamental right back then, and Article 25, which spoke about freedom of religion, and Article 26, which spoke about right to manage religious affairs, and Article 31, which spoke about protection against compulsory acquisition of property. While the case was still pending, the Kerala government passed another amendment in 1971. At the same time, Parliament also passed constitutional amendments to protect such land reform laws from being challenged before the court. Now, let us discuss about what did the 24th Amendment and 25th Amendment speak about. See, the 24th Amendment was brought into effect due to Golaknath versus State of Punjab's obiter and ratio, where it was stated that the parliament cannot amend fundamental rights by the Supreme Court. Now, what did the 24th Amendment talk about? It amended Article 368 to clearly state that the parliament can amend any part of the constitution, including fundamental rights. And also, the amendment made it compulsory for the president to give assent to constitutional amendment bills. Now, what did the 25th constitutional amendment speak about? It, it told that the land reforms as well as socialist policies could not be challenged before the court. What did the law actually do? It curtailed right to property and it inserted Article 13C, which stated that if a law is made to implement directive principles, especially Article 39B and C, then it cannot be challenged for violating Article 14 or 19. Basically, directive principles were given priority over certain fundamental rights. Now we'll look into what were the arguments made by the petitioners. The main argument made by the petitioner was simple. Parliament could attempt to amend the constitution, but it could not destroy its basic structure. The petitioner also argued that certain core principles of the constitution, which were fundamental, could not be altered by the parliament. These core principles were later culminated into basic structure. The basic structure could include democracy, judicial review, rule of law, fundamental rights as well. If parliament removes these, the constitution loses its identity. The petitioner argued that 24th and 25th constitutional amendments would weaken fundamental rights. Another powerful argument that the petitioner actually made was that the parliament was created to protect citizens from arbitrary power, especially after colonial rule. If parliament can amend anything without limits, then citizens could again be at the mercy of the government. Now let us look into the arguments made by the respondents. The government basically argued that Parliament has got unlimited powers to amend the Constitution. They stated that Article 368 gave Parliament full amending powers and there were no restrictions written in the Constitution upon the Parliament's power to amend the Constitution. So, courts cannot create limits where none existed. The government also stated that India was a welfare state and to achieve land reforms, economic equality, and redistribution of wealth, Parliament must be given wider powers. If courts restrict Parliament, then social and economic reforms would suffer. They also argued that laws made to implement directive principles should not be struck down easily. The government went as far as suggesting that if parliament represents the will of the people, then it can reshape democracy. That is, if the people elect parliament, they should unelect, I mean to say, if the people elect parliament, why should unelected judges limit its power? In 1967, the Supreme Court in Golaknath case stated that the parliament cannot amend fundamental rights. This was a huge blow to parliament. The government believed this decision limited its ability to bring social and economic reforms. After winning a massive majority in 1971 elections, the government led by Prime Minister Indira Gandhi passed a series of constitutional amendments, the 24th and 25th amendments. The goal was to restore parliament supremacy and undo the effect of Golaknath's case. You may actually question, why did the Chief Justice constitute 13 judges bench? The earlier Golaknath's case was decided by 11 judges. To reconsider such a big decision, the Supreme Court needed a bench of equal or larger strength. So, Chief Justice S.M. Sikri constituted the largest bench in Indian history, 13 judges. The entire constitutional balance was at stake, and thus it was not an ordinary case. On 24th April 1973, the 13 judges bench delivered its verdict. The decision was extremely close, 7 judges versus 6. Just one vote could have changed constitutional history. The court said Parliament can amend the constitution, but it could not alter the basic structure of the constitution. Now, what is exactly the basic structure? The court stated that the constitution has certain core features that gave its identity. Parliament cannot destroy these features. The examples were independent judiciary, parliamentary system, free and fair elections, supremacy of constitution, judicial review, rule of law, etc. Do let me know in the comments how much of impartiality and independence in judiciary we are following as a nation. And do let me know what do you think is your take on independence of judiciary when you take Aravali Range case into consideration. According to me, the judiciary and executive are running in consonance with each other and not in their respective spheres. And do you think we are following rule of law? See, at one time we say we follow rule of law, but the bureaucrats and all these people are tried before the administrative tribunals and not ordinary courts like India, like the ordinary people. So, how far are we actually following rule of law? Was there any attempt made to overrule this case by judiciary? Yes. Justice Chief Justice Ray, who constituted the 13th judge, tried to review the case, but he could not succeed due to a plea by Nani Palkiwala, who stated that the verdict should not be disturbed. Thus, I would like to conclude by stating that Keshavananda Bharati case was a historic clash between dictatorship and democracy. The judgment ensured that the Parliament's power to amend the constitution was not unlimited. It prevented unchecked operation of measures like the 39th and 41st Amendments when they threatened the Constitution's core principles. The court refused to allow amendments that damaged fundamental rights or violated the basic structure doctrine, safeguarding constitutional supremacy over political power. In doing so, it protected India from drifting from a one party rule system. Also, I would like to say that by bringing basic structure doctrine, the judiciary indirectly encroached upon the lawmaking function of the government. Do you think judiciary was fair in bringing a basic structure doctrine to interpret the Indian Constitution? Given we know we follow the separation of powers concept, and how much of separation of powers are we actually following? See, there is a case law called as Ram Javaria versus State of Punjab. That case actually stated that we follow separation of functions rather than separation of powers. because power is an abstract notion. Thank you for listening to my lecture.